is for best collaboration.
Chris Brown featuring T-Pain. Roll featuring T-Pain. DJ Khaled featuring T-Pain. Featuring T-Pain.
T-Pain featuring T-Pain.
And the winner is
T-Pain. Let's go.
Everybody at the label is like, well, f T-Pain then. That's just what happens.
You had like $0, bro?
I had to borrow money to get my kids Burger King.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was the music Jesus, man. You want to get saved, come to the church of T-Pain. I'll slam your hook on there and I'll make sure you're good for at least 3 more years and you'll be fine. I did a lot of that for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know. Most of those features I did all of them for free. So I did a lot of stuff for free and then, nothing was reciprocated.
Nobody is your brother. I've had DJ Khaled. Everybody done told me I'm your brother. Do not believe that shit.
Lord have mercy, King. Man, you know you're going to get me in trouble, man.
Lobbies and Gentlegrams, the auto-tune assassinator, automatic slapper generator brought plaques to a massive class of rappers, sent a favor to every music maker, major player, but after all the hits and chart dominance, we'd be remiss to dismiss the swift slip that T-Pain hit once the new decade commenced. 2010 marked a turning point in time, and with that shift, T-Pain was left behind. The industry did him dirty, so it's time to expose it all. But first, run, don't crawl. To toss a like and subscribe, just like a ball.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Now, Lobbies and Gentlegrams, think about all the music you loved that defined this generation, last generation, and maybe even the generation before that. I'm talking all the way from when Kanye West released 808s and Heartbreak to the spiral of a new crop of rappers that ran off with the sound that project laid down. From Drake, Kid Cudi, Travis Scott, Future, to then Lil Uzi, Juice WRLD, XXX, and more. None of these artists would have had the type of career and sound that they now do if it wasn't for T-Pain.
Huh?
That might sound outrageous in 2025, because nowadays T-Pain is more akin to a Kai Cenat than a Kanye West. But T-Pain ushered in a sound, a melodic device, a blueprint that opened the doors for your favorite rappers to integrate melody, harmony, auto-tune, and falling in love with strippers in their music the way that they now do. And how did the industry thank him? They threw him to the curb. If the industry had their way, T-Pain would be begging for change on the street corner. I'm exaggerating, but for a man who was once dominating the entire top 10 of the Billboard charts for multi-year periods, the industry had no problem letting his name and legacy slip off into irrelevancy for a large chunk of time, replacing him with other artists that completely followed his blueprint, sound, and archetype. It was only thanks to T-Pain's hard work, his charisma, and his talent that he was able to rebuild bigger than ever before. Because if he relied on his friends in the industry, the very same ones that he gave multi-platinum hits to year after year, he would have possibly been dead broke.
You had like $0, bro?
I had to borrow money to get my kids Burger King.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? Well, recently T-Pain did an interview with Shannon Sharpe where he was celebrating his legacy, the years of pain, no pun intended, that he put on those charts. He documented how he's reaping the fruits of his labor, selling his catalog, being able to now acquire private jets with the profits of his music. But amidst the celebration came a moment of honesty in this new interview where T-Pain admitted that the biggest takeaway that he had while being at the top of the game is that no one in this industry is your friend. In fact, one of T-Pain's biggest collaborators, arguably the man who has T-Pain to thank large in part for the success that he attained throughout his career, DJ Khaled. T-Pain says Khaled is a prime example of someone who will call you his brother through thick and thin when everything is going good, when the hits keep flowing, but when the buzz dries down, DJ Khaled is nowhere to be found.
Nobody is your brother. I've had DJ Khaled. Everybody done told me I'm your brother. Do not believe that shit.
Lord have mercy, King. Man, you know you're going to get me in trouble, man.
When I say shit like DJ Khaled, it's very apparent.
Yeah.
Like DJ Khaled knows how to move. He knows how to do things with different people and shit like that. But it's like, it's not a DJ Khaled type of thing. That's just the first person I can think of.
And it's pretty haunting to know that 15 years after DJ Khaled and T-Pain's biggest collaboration together, this is how T-Pain feels the industry has done him. Chewed him up and left him behind. And it's significant for many different reasons. Firstly, T-Pain gave DJ Khaled arguably his most iconic hit with All I Do Is Win, something DJ Khaled still performs to this day on the off chance that anyone actually wants to hire him as a performer. Beyond that, this was even a song that Barack Obama used during one of his presidential speeches.
Thank you, everybody. How do you like my new entrance music?
And ultimately, it doesn't start and stop with DJ Khaled. T-Pain emphasized that this was the treatment he received all across the board throughout the industry. Not only did T-Pain probably inspire your favorite rapper, but at one point he was probably a lot bigger than your favorite rapper. So to think that he was able to hit this point where people treat him like he virtually doesn't even exist after he gave them all these hits is a disgrace to the legend that T-Pain is. Thankfully, again, only on his own, completely independent, was T-Pain able to work his way back up to a point where he's now in a very comfortable financial position. However, at one point, T-Pain had lost everything to the point where he needed to borrow money to buy his kids food.
You had like $0 broke
I
up?
had to borrow money to get my kids Burger King.
Those 3 Big Macs are for me.
Now, it is great to see where T-Pain is in 2025, and he truly deserves it. Recently, I believe he performed at Tyler's Camp Flog Gnaw Festival, and I think this performance speaks volumes to the influence T-Pain has had on this generation. He performed one of his iconic hits, Kiss Kiss, over the Travis Scott Fiend instrumental, and just by listening to this beat over T-Pain's hook, you can tell how inspirational and how integral his sound was to the superstars we see in the game today. Now, it's crazy because if you were born after T-Pain's run in 2009, 2010, you're probably 15 years old, you're probably too young to be watching this video. But if somehow you did find yourself stumbling across it, you probably know T-Pain more for his Twitch live streams today than you do for his music, which is again just insane to think about because before your favorite trap artist or melody-driven rapper was running the game, the industry literally looked like T-Pain featuring T-Pain.
Here are the nominees for Best Collaboration.
Chris Brown featuring T-Pain, Flo Rida featuring T-Pain, DJ Khaled featuring T-Pain, Kanye West featuring T-Pain, T-Pain featuring T-Pain.
And the winner is T-Pain. Let's go.
And that's why the story of T-Pain is so crazy, because it's one of the only ones I could think of in history where we see an artist of that magnitude with that many hits back to back to back in such a short period of time completely stop cooking on the Billboard charts within the snap of a finger. But there may be a deeper, darker reason for this. T-Pain took bullets for the industry that no artist after him has ever had to go through, and it was all so he could lay the path and the foundation for the artists that we see today flourish. But in order to understand that, we gotta take it all the way back. T-Pain was born on September 30th, 1985, in Tallahassee, Florida, to a family that was deeply rooted in music. One day, his father found an old keyboard just lying on the street, so he brought it home. He realized it still worked, and he gave it to his 8-year-old son, T-Pain. Within just a few weeks, T-Pain had figured out how to play it and was performing some of his dad's favorite songs. And it's crazy because to this day, a lot of T-Pain's biggest hits he produced himself, and he'll still get on Twitch and cook up beats and music in general live from scratch. But back to the 1990s. See, after Pain's father realized he had a natural talent, he became more supportive than ever of T-Pain pursuing music. He bought him a larger keyboard and a 4-track recorder, and before long, T-Pain had turned his bedroom into a small home studio. It was during this time period where he taught himself how to produce. However, although he excelled in music, he actually struggled a lot socially, which is a common thing for musicians. And because of this, at school, T-Pain was often bullied and teased, and that pushed him further into music as an escape. Whenever he came home upset, he would sit behind his keyboard, crank the speakers, and start layering bass lines until the frustration eased.
Lock myself in my room, yank that radio up with the speakers my brother had, and just play those bass lines. I would take my anger out like that. I would just play bass lines to music, and that would calm me down. That would make me forget about everything that happened that day.
Now, once T-Pain's father saw how music calmed his son, he suggested homeschooling T-Pain so he could focus more on developing his craft without daily distractions or harassment. This decision gave him uninterrupted time to immerse himself fully in learning instruments, arranging melodies, and exploring recording techniques. And by his teenage years, T-Pain begun producing for local artists in his hometown of Tallahassee. Eventually, he joined a rap group called Nappy Heads, where he handled production, DJ duties, and sang hooks in addition to rapping. The group started building buzz across Florida with early singles like Robbery and FLA. But with their regional popularity growing, so did their internal conflict. By 2003 or 2004, their creative differences had led to the group splitting up. See, T-Pain's father acted as the group's manager. That would lead some of the members to accuse him of showing favoritism to his son, and at the same time, T-Pain claims that he was the one responsible for writing most of the hooks and producing most of the beats. And because of that workload, he had suggested that each artist make a solo project instead. But when they did, most of the group members ended up slowly turning against him and his father.
I was producing everything. I was basically doing all the hooks. It turned into a feud within the group. And my dad was managing the group. So everybody felt like the favoritism was at full blast. Everybody against me and my dad kind of thing. I don't know why we thought we was NWA. It just wasn't working out. But once I got on after going solo and I was working on my solo project while I was still in the group because everybody else was. Nobody saw a problem with that. And I was the one recording their solo albums. And then when I did mine, everybody was like, oh, what, you trying to go solo?
Now, after the breakup of the Nappy Heads, T-Pain nearly gave up on music. He was broke, unsure of his direction, and even considered applying for a job at McDonald's just to make ends meet. But before that happened, one experiment changed everything. He remixed Akon's hit, Locked Up, flipping it into a version called I'm Effed Up.
Trying to hit the south side, now they done put one in, up my transmission.
Now, aside from T-Pain really pouring his heart out on this remix, documenting where he was at with his struggles at that particular period of time, if you also notice, he wasn't using any autotune on that remix. That'll play an important role in the story shortly because T-Pain got, I can't find the right word, abused in the industry, I guess, just for using autotune. But now, this remix that he did, this was the first song T-Pain had that actually gained some traction outside of his hometown of Florida and ended up hitting Georgia, where it caught the attention of Akon's brother, Boo. Boo was also in the music industry, and he played the song for Akon. Akon also loved the song, so he called T-Pain up personally, trying to sign him. But T-Pain didn't think it was real at the time, so he hung up. The irony is that T-Pain was literally on his way to interview at McDonald's when he finally connected with Akon on the phone. And from there, the rest is history.
You sleeping in the car, your wife sending money.
Akon called me right when I got my McDonald's application, and I thought somebody was playing on my phone because that got a funny voice, and I was like, can't be a real person on my phone. What is this? So I hung up on him because I thought somebody was playing on my phone. Pip. He said he wanted to meet up, took me to a damn pizza parlor, him and Boo. I was like, y'all the same person.
They do look like twins.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is that when T-Pain first signed to Convict Music, Akon's label, he initially wasn't signed as an artist. He was signed as a songwriter. This is around 2004, 2005, and immediately T-Pain writes the song, I'm Sprung. I'm sprung, dog, she got me. I can't play you the actual song due to copyright, so I figured I'd sing it for you instead. But what's also important to note is that, again, it's going to play an important role in the video shortly, but because this was a reference track, because T-Pain was just getting his foot in the door, he didn't know what style he should approach his music with. The majority of the I'm Sprung song, just like his remix to Locked Up, also didn't feature much auto-tune at all. He only had it on the verses. The hook was his natural singing voice, but many people thought T-Pain couldn't actually sing. It was all auto-tune. Anyways, that doesn't matter for this part of the story. What matters is again, T-Pain was a songwriter on Convict Music. So I'm Sprung was initially a song that was supposed to go to Akon. But Akon ultimately passed on the song. He said it was too soft and that he doesn't sing to women. If you remember at this time, Akon was blowing up off songs like Locked Up, Ghetto, and Soul Survivor with Jeezy, right? And Akon actually credits himself as being the first R&B singer singing about gang-related subject matter. So this does line up with T-Pain's story of Akon rejecting I'm Sprung because that song did not fit his brand.
I was the first producer to put a tag on a track. Before anybody, you heard convict. That was the first tag ever done.
Cap.
And I think this is why people thought that I was a rapper, because I was probably the first R&B artist that was actually singing about what rappers rapped about. There was no R&B artist talking about being locked up, talking about the ghetto, talking about like being a survivor in these streets.
Now, I don't know, but I think Akon is straight capping on that claim. I mean, it's almost as if he forgot about Goody Mob, Bone Thugs and Harmony, even 50 Cent, who were all incorporating singing and R&B into street-related subject matter. I mean, had he never heard Ghetto Quran? But anyways, with Akon rejecting it, T-Pain ended up keeping the reference track that he laid down for Akon for himself and just pushed it out locally. He pushed it to Felicia Fox, who was hosting a radio show in Tallahassee. She heard it, thought it was a smash, started playing it nonstop on the radio, and from there, it blew up.
I started writing stuff for Akon. I really was supposed to be signed as a writer. I wasn't supposed to be an artist. So I wrote I'm Sprung for Akon. This was the time around he had Soul Survivor. Soul Survivor was doing so good that Akon legit told me, we don't make songs for girls. Yeah. So I took the record back and gave it to Felicia Fox in Tallahassee, and she played it on the radio twice, and she was like, this is a smash.
Now, with the buzz of I'm Sprung picking up, it wasn't just Akon that came calling. Interscope had offered T-Pain $900,000 as a signing bonus just for that song. Atlantic Records had also approached him with a $700,000 signing bonus offer. But while these major labels were solely interested in the one big hit that T-Pain now had, Akon was interested in actually developing T-Pain as an artist with a long-standing career. But he only had $20,000 to offer Pain. However, there was a trade-off. Opt out of those big major label advances right now and gain longevity from Akon's support and mentorship instead.
Khan said, I can give you $20,000 and a career. They all offered a ton of money. It was offering millions, and then Akon was offering 20 grand, but he promised me that it was going to go further than the one song, and so that's what I wanted the most.
Now, with I'm Sprung hitting the radio, this was a sound that the industry was not used to. Remember how I said T-Pain for the hook was using his original voice, but on the verses, he was actually experimenting with sprinkling autotune over his vocals. And it was because of that song that many credit T-Pain to inventing autotune, but he actually didn't. 35 years before, in the 70s, Stevie Wonder and Roger Troutman were using talk boxes, which produced a very similar effect on your voice. And a lot of other artists had experimented with vocoder effects and even autotune itself. Autotune was actually a pitch correction technology that was created by Dr. Andy Helderbrand, sorry for mispronouncing that name. And the first major pop artist to popularize it was Cher with her 1998 hit, Believe. T-Pain had originally heard Jennifer Lopez using it on one of her tracks, and that's what inspired him to start implementing the tool into his own music. And the thing is, no one really used autotune the way T-Pain did. That's why people credit him for being the face of autotune, because he would sing full songs through the machine and still make them sound very soulful and full of human emotion.
I heard it on a commercial once. It was If You Had My Love by Jennifer Lopez. It was the Dark Child remix. And he used it for like 2 seconds on that song. And I heard that part and I was like, I gotta find out what that is. I wasn't super good at the internet back then. It took me about a year and change to find it. And then I studied it some more once I found it and learned how to use it correctly.
You became a bad motherfucker, man.
Just
Put it down like that.
Bad motherfucker. Bro.
So with that, I'm Sprung completely shook the industry. It hit the charts in August of 2005 and quickly climbed up all the way to number 8 on Billboard Hot 100. It was certified platinum. And just like that, T-Pain became a household name. But because of the song's quick explosion, the label wanted to get an album out of him as soon as possible. And this is where I think the first downside to T-Pain's career was. See, just 4 months after I'm Sprung had hit the radio, T-Pain had put out his debut album, Rappa which wasn't just slightly underwhelming from a quality perspective, but also didn't perform extremely well from a commercial standpoint on the charts either. It made its debut at number 40 on the charts, selling around 47,000 in the first week, which in an era where everyone was buying physical CDs was not a very high first week sales number. You had his contemporaries like Akon, Chris Brown, Neo, all selling well above 100,000 copies in the first week with their debut albums, and it kind of hindered T-Pain from the jump from being considered an actual albums artist. He was known more for his individual singles. And that's fine and all as a pop star, but if you want longevity in this game, you also have to come with classic projects that people remember for the test of time if you want them to take you seriously and put you in that upper echelon of legends in the game. But don't get me wrong, Rappa was still a pretty impressive album. Obviously the title being in reference to the fact that T-Pain was one of the very few rappers who turned into a singer, right? Pioneering that whole genre of incorporating hip-hop into his smooth, melodic, club-driven melodies. And with the strength of T-Pain's hit-making capabilities, regardless of the weak initial impact of the project, it did end up spawning another massive hit, even bigger than I'm Sprung, with I'm in Love with a Stripper, that hit number 5 on the Billboard charts. And because of the success of that song, Rappa the album ended up climbing back up to Billboard, hitting a new peak of number 33. Just for a little bit of music industry knowledge, that's also something that was very rare in the CD era. Now with streaming, right, if you go viral, your album will probably shoot up the charts because more people are going on to Spotify and listening to it. But with T-Pain, he had another hit off that project after the project already came out, and that meant that more eyeballs were actually going into physical stores to buy the album months after it already came out. Usually back then in the CD era, you'd have a massive first week and then the album sales will slowly start to decline. With T-Pain, they were only going up. And with that, rappers started realizing the cheat code. T-Pain was an incredible hit writer, so all you had to do was put one of his hooks on your song and you were golden from the jump. And now this trend started in around 2006 when E40 put T-Pain on his song You and That, which shot up to 13 on Billboard Hot 100 and went platinum. And it was with that that T-Pain became the hook king. 2007. Good times. I had just graduated 4th grade. I already had a bunch of Eminem and 50 Cent downloaded off of LimeWire onto my PlayStation Portable, my PSP. You guys remember what that is? But I vividly remember driving home from school listening to Canadian radio and hearing, "Baby girl, what's your name?" This song sounded so timeless, and I mean, I was so young and clueless, and maybe they had played it so many times on radio that initially I thought this song had been out for like 20 years. Like, I didn't know anything. I think I had heard it so much as a young kid throughout the early months of 2007 that I just thought it was a classic that they were just spinning on radio like they would a Michael Jackson's Thriller. I quickly discovered that no, this song had came out just a couple months prior, and that's when I became hooked. T-Pain, Akon, Kanye, and Lil Wayne, they went diamond on my PSP. The 4th grade me would be so proud that I'm out here documenting T-Pain's career on YouTube when back then I was probably watching Charlie Bit My Finger.
Charlie bit me.
But enough about me. Yeah, that song became a monster. This was by far T-Pain's biggest hit. At this point, it's probably diamond. And it was around this time, again, early 2007, that rappers started realizing T-Pain was the cheat code. If you couldn't sing, just get T-Pain on your hook. He'll write you a monster, timeless, classic hook, and your song will become a smash. Before it was Drake on the hooks, Wayne on the hooks, Future on the hooks, it was T-Pain, alright? So right at the start of the year, you had Bow Wow's Out of My System featuring T-Pain, number 22 on the Billboard charts. R. Kelly, I'm a Flirt, number 12. I'm So Hood with DJ Khaled. At that point in time, that was DJ Khaled's biggest hit, number 19 on the charts. Just remember that because DJ Khaled has a lot to thank T-Pain for. And do you guys remember the remix to that song? That had every rapper in the game on that remix. Busta Rhymes, Ludacris, Big Boy, Lil Wayne, Jeezy, Rick Ross. Monster remix. Then you also had Shoddy by Plies featuring T-Pain. Cyclone with Baby Bash featuring T-Pain, hit number 7 on the charts. Baby Don't Go with Fabulous, number 23. And then his biggest hit up to that point in time, Kiss Kiss with Chris Brown, reaching number 1 on the Billboard charts. But no, it didn't stop there. Good Life with Kanye West, and then the massive Low with Flo Rida. Guys, if you want an idea of how much of a machine T-Pain was at this point in time, this stuff was flowing out effortlessly for him, so much so to the point he was producing multi-platinum, even diamond hits back to back in the same recording sessions. Shoddy, the hook that he did on that song, and Low were recorded in the same night, and then I'm So Hood and Two Step Remix with DJ Unk, rest in peace to DJ Unk, those two songs were also both recorded in the same night.
The first song was I'm So Hood.
I'm So Hood.
Yeah, and I did that and Two Step the same night. So that was,
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
That was pretty cool. I did a lot of songs the same night. Low with Flo Rida and Shawty with Plies the same night.
Wow,
so, yeah.
Classic, damn.
When you're on fire, you just keep going.
Now what's crazy is T-Pain was sticking up for Florida artists. Plies was just getting a small buzz around this time, and the label wanted to actually put someone bigger on that Shoddy song because the hook, that was one of my favorite T-Pain hooks. That was a massive hook. So strategically, they're like, let's put a massive artist on this. But T-Pain loved what Plies did so much with that song that he said, no, if Plies gets removed from this song, then I'm not clearing it.
When Plies did his thing to Shawty, Mike Karen hit me and he was like, this guy did a version. It's good, but we want it to be a bigger record because we feel like the record is bigger. We can give it to a bigger artist. I said, this killed it. Give it to him or nobody gets it because I'm not going to clear it after that.
But it wasn't just Plies. He also put Flo Rida on, right? Low, the song that T-Pain wrote in the same night he did Shoddy, that song was initially supposed to go to Nelly because apparently he was rocking apple-bottom jeans at the time. But Nelly said the song was too corny, so ultimately they gave it to Flo Rida. And it's kind of funny because around 2008 was when Nelly's massive success started slowly dwindling, and I mean, I could only imagine a song like Low, especially if Nelly ended up singing the hook, that would have shot him into a whole other stratosphere and just completely revived his career. But instead, it set the stage for Flo Rida to start having a massive tear throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s.
So Low went to Nelly first because he had the apple bottom jeans at the time. Nelly said it was corny.
So with all these stimulus packages that T-Pain was handing out, literally catapulting careers in Flo Rida, DJ Khaled, and Plies, it was only right that T-Pain started focusing on himself, and this is where he really elevated his entire 2007 run. He dropped his second album, Epiphany, in June of 2007, and this one, unlike his debut album, actually performed very well as a standalone project. It sold around 170,000 copies in the first week, went platinum, hit #1 on the Billboard charts, spawned another top 5 single in Bartender. And I mean, guys, I know I probably already played this clip, but by the end of this frickin' year, this is what the BET Awards look like.
Here are the nominees for Best Collaboration.
Chris Brown featuring T-Pain, Flo Rida featuring T-Pain, DJ Khaled featuring T-Pain, Kanye West featuring T-Pain, T-Pain featuring T-Pain.
And the winner is T-Pain. Let's go.
Now, Aubrey's and Gentlegrams, it's no secret that Kendrick Lamar left some injuries on the emotions of your favorite pop star after that rap battle.
I study rap battles for a living.
But speaking of injuries, we gotta talk about America's largest injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan's team of lawyers have been fighting to make sure people like you, who may have suffered an injury, will get what you deserve. If you get hurt in a car accident, or at work, or if an insurance company tries to lowball you, Morgan & Morgan is the largest injury law firm in the US that will fight to get you the money you might be owed. They have over 1,000 attorneys, offices in all 50 states, and they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. For example, one of their clients in Florida got $12 million after a work accident, even though their insurance company was only ready to offer $350,000. So when you hire Morgan & Morgan, it's like bringing in a legal army, and their fee is free unless they win your case. If you want them to evaluate your injury case for free today to see if you qualify for their legal support, you can check out the link in the description, the pinned comment, or the QR code you see on the screen.
Man, what a monstrous run, and the craziest part of all is that right as T-Pain was recording Bartender, he actually ended up saving a person's life.
Right after I made that song, I went out and saw a bunch of police tape around the resort, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I just went to the bar again and saw this guy, old white guy, like in his 70s. I offered him a drink. I was like, man, let's have some fun. You know, his name was Bob, around with Bob, and he was like, that police tape back there is because my wife just died in the hotel. He said, I was at the bar taking my last drink. He's gonna kill himself. He was gonna kill himself. He was like, the way you came up here and showed me love and just had fun with me, you and your friend, and I'd still talk to him to this day.
Now, it's only fitting that after the monstrous run T-Pain went on in 2007, he started 2008 off even bigger. I mean, look at this, you guys. This man literally from the first week of 2008 all the way up until the middle of March, T-Pain had the #1 song on the Billboard charts. But this is when things started taking, I wouldn't say a dark turn, just some red flags started popping up. Like I said before, T-Pain's hooks were the cheat code to getting rappers massive hits on the charts. And it wasn't just because of his excellent songwriting capabilities, but obviously it was that unique auto-tune sound, right? That robotic tone that defined the entire era of 2008 and 2007. And while T-Pain was obviously the most integral key to the success of that sound, after his monstrous run in 2007, other rappers started realizing, wait, if I could also write some pretty strong hooks, why don't I just slap the auto-tune on my voice and T-Pain myself? This is when you had one of my favorite Lil Wayne songs of all time, Me and My Drank, pop up. This is when Lil Wayne really pioneered that syrupy, alien-like vocal technique that we would see Young Thug and Lil Uzi Vert use later on. But again, this is off a blueprint that T-Pain had implemented, right? We saw Lil Wayne also dominate the charts that year with his hit Lollipop, which was drenched in autotune. And that showed people that it wasn't just T-Pain that was able to use that formula and take it to the next level. But Lil Wayne was sticking right by T-Pain's side, right? They collaborated heavily together. They went on tour together. They were pretty much inseparable at that point in time. He rap and he sing. Who remembers that? Anyways, T-Pain doesn't necessarily credit Lil Wayne, two rappers realizing that they don't actually need T-Pain's auto-tune to make their songs hits. They could use it by themselves. T-Pain says it was Snoop Dogg's song, Sensual Seduction, which came out in that same year, where Snoop wasn't rapping, there was no G-Funk involved, it was straight, melodic, auto-tune crooning over a vintage, funky beat. And that song shot right up on the Billboard charts, and that's when T-Pain realized he might have been in trouble.
I was the cheat code until Snoop did Sensual Seduction. Before that, Jamie Foxx got me on Blame It because he was using auto-tune, and he was like, I don't want to be seen as trying to take your Diddy gave me a point on Last Train to Paris because he was using auto-tune.
Just because he was using it?
Just because he was using it. I wasn't even on there.
That's dope.
Like I said, I was the face. So anytime anybody had anything to do with auto-tune, it was me. I was involved.
Wow.
And Snoop made it clear to people, this is just available for everybody.
But while Snoop let it be known in the industry that anyone can use autotune, a lot of rappers still did credit T-Pain as the face of it and therefore wanted his contributions to the creation of their music when they were using it themselves. And that's where we saw Kanye West begin to concoct 808s and Heartbreak. This was right after the tragic passing of Kanye West's mother, Donda West, and he immediately scrapped what was supposed to be the conclusion of his college album trilogy with Good Ass Job. Remember, you had College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, then Good Ass Job. But no, Kanye did an immediate 180 after losing his mother, and due to the tragedy and heartbreak he faced, he poured it all into the music. 808 drums drenched in auto-tune crooning Heartbreak. And T-Pain says Kanye told him that T-Pain's debut album, Rapper Turned Sanga, was the blueprint for Kanye to shape this album, because Rapper Turned Sanga was a bunch of love songs drenched in bass. Love songs being the heartbreak, the bass being the 808s, 808s and Heartbreak. And because of that, Kanye brought T-Pain in for the recording process of the album, making him an integral role in producing the sound of the project. However, T-Pain never ended up actually getting a placement as a feature on the project at all.
It really came down to the same fact of what Kanye told me, like 808s and Heartbreaks is Rapper Turned Sanga. Rapper Turned Sanga was a bunch of love songs with a ton of bass in them. Love songs being the heartbreak, 808s being the bass. In a sense, we just kind of remade Rapper Turned Sanga, but in all honesty, just like Kanye said, he just had a better marketing plan. We had writing sessions. He said he wanted that sound from my first album. I just helped him out and just, showed him what vibes and what feelings I had making my first album, and it kind of just migrated over to 808s and Heartbreak.
So now you have two of the biggest rappers in the world with Lil Wayne and Kanye West, both integrating T-Pain's signature sound into their own music, taking it to new levels. Lil Wayne even saying at the time after Carter 3 that he was bored with hip-hop, he wanted to transition into rock, and he thinks only him and Kanye are on the right frequency where they're focusing more on melody than lyrics. But that didn't necessarily leave T-Pain in the blinders. Unlike his first two albums, because of the momentum that T-Pain now had, he decided to put out his third album a lot sooner than the breaks he took in between his first two. And aside from every major rapper adopting T-Pain's sound, this in my opinion was the second red flag in T-Pain's, I don't want to call it downfall, but him being less dominant in the industry. It was almost an example of oversaturation. See, the first single of his third album, Can't Believe It, featuring Lil Wayne, that was a massive success. But at this point in time, the label is backing T-Pain with a massive budget because he's bigger than ever. So he's producing these multi-$100,000 plus music videos for all the singles to his third album. But aside from that first single, none of the other ones had the same impact that a Bartender or a Buy You a Drink had. Except they now had a much bigger budget behind them. So put it this way, the label is spending a lot more money on music videos, on features, on promotion, but the singles are not performing at the same magnitude. You had Chopped and Screwed with Ludacris, Freeze with Chris Brown, Therapy with Kanye West. You had multiple Akon features on that project. Mary J. Blige was on there. And it performed okay. Released at the tail end of 2008, it sold around 170,000 copies in the first week. So it wasn't an increase from his second album, but he stayed around the same level. But meanwhile, again, look at his contemporaries. Chris Brown is doing 300K in the first week. Akon's Convicted album sold around 3 million copies. If you want to compare him to Lil Wayne and Kanye, those guys were doing 1 million the first week. So again, T-Pain never fully formed himself as an albums artist. People weren't rushing to the stores to buy physical copies of his CDs the same way they were with his competition. And I think it's being an albums artist that's going to give you that longevity in the game, because when your hit making capabilities aren't as strong as they once were, or your sound isn't as dominant, so you're not finding yourself on the charts as frequently, you'll still have a devoted, loyal fan base if you make people fall in love with your stories that you tell through your projects. I mean, we're seeing that right now, right? Tyler, the Creator, didn't have a single #1 hit in the last year, but he released 2 amazing albums, each of them not only selling very well, but also pushing his loyal fanbase into purchasing actual concert tickets to the point where he was selling out the Crypto Arena in LA 6 nights in a row. You want that type of longevity, that type of impact, you gotta come with some massive influential albums. But don't get me wrong, around this time in the story, T-Pain was still chucking out the hits, chucking out the stimulus packages. He had Jamie Foxx's Blame It, that hit #2 on the charts, Got Money with Lil Wayne #10, The Boss with Rick Ross, that hit #17. So by the end of 2008, I mean, his voice was one of the most recognizable in music, and he was still all over radio, especially with those hooks. Even though all these other rappers were now using autotune on their own, T-Pain was still the face, but that might change by 2009. Now, there were 2 massive big red flags in 2009 that most definitely left the biggest dent in T-Pain's career. The first one being right at the tip top of the year, February 2009, a young Canadian, a former child actor, was so inspired by Kanye West's 808s and Heartbreak, an album that again T-Pain was integral in producing, that he decided to take that influence to another level, be a rapper turned singer on a level that no one had ever seen before on his breakout mixtape, So Far Gone. I'm talking about La Brianna, Marilyn Monroe v. Ho, Drake, if you didn't know. And that mixtape sent an absolute shockwave through the industry. No one had heard something like this. Yeah, he was heavily inspired by Kanye. Yes, he was using auto-tune, but he was doing it in a different way than we had heard before. The rapping and the singing were no longer segregated. They were synonymous. Breakout hits like Best I Ever Had, Successful, you didn't know if he was singing or if he was rapping, but it worked. And immediately, a new lane, all off T-Pain's blueprint, had been formed. Now, again, he credits Kanye West for the sound of So Far Gone, but this is where T-Pain starts getting kind of tossed to the side, or his influence really gets downplayed. So much so to the point where 40, Drake's right-hand producer, was actually doing an interview right before they released Drake's debut album, Thank Me Later, and he was saying that Kanye West was getting mad at him and Drake for biting Kanye's sound so hard from 808s on So Far Gone. 40 had said, "There are more similarities between me and Kanye on 808s and So Far Gone than on Drake's new album, Thank Me Later. Kanye cussed me out one day about jacking his sound. He said, 40, I don't think you should be in the studio right now because you might just hear my new stuff and subconsciously steal my new stuff and it wouldn't even be your fault. And I can't even be mad at him because the last CD I listened to was 808s and Heartbreak before I started doing So Far Gone. I try to not listen to too much music because I don't want to be subconsciously influenced, and Kanye's 100% right about that." So he's literally admitting to jocking Kanye's entire 808s and Heartbreak sound. And to be fair, in an interview Drake did in around 2019, he would finally give T-Pain the credit he deserved for shaping a lot of the early sound that we heard from Drake that was very melody driven.
There's people who inspired me. Obviously, 50 Cent, 21 Questions will probably be my most inspiring example of a guy who's not supposed to be singing. Obviously, you had, T-Pain and Wayne doing their style of things, which was huge. Another major example was 808s, basically a singing album inspired by genres in music that maybe people in rap didn't even know about. I'll always give credit where credit is due, so I credit all those people with that movement.
But it didn't really matter too much, even if Drake did give Kanye or T-Pain the credit, right? He was now standing next to Lil Wayne, someone who T-Pain had stood next to for the entirety of 2008. Lil Wayne now had a protege, and that protege was killing every hook. Lil Wayne even rapped, "We're gonna be alright if we put Drake on every hook," because of course Drake was signed to him, so all he had to do was kick his feet up and collect a check every time Drake dropped a killer hook that became a massive hit and put money into Wayne's pocket. But does that sound familiar? That same blueprint that T-Pain had, where he was kind of rapping, kind of singing on these hooks drenched in autotune, Drake had now fully ran with that formula, and he was on every single hook for your favorite rapper. It's kind of crazy to me that him and T-Pain never collaborated, but there's a reason for that. We'll get to that shortly in this video. But yeah, that's red flag number 1, right? A new guy had now taken T-Pain's lane. Red flag number 2. T-Pain had been on so many features from 2007 to 2008 that his label had actually made the horrible decision of telling him to stop doing features because radio stations were getting confused. See, if you guys didn't know back in the day, the way radio worked is if people turned off the station when they heard a song, the stations would use that data to know, okay, maybe let's play this song less because it's making people turn off the radio. And as a result, a strategy they would use is avoid having the same artist with different songs go back to back at the same time on the station, right? So if you had like two massive Chris Brown hits, you're not going to play them back to back because people might be like, oh, there's so much Chris Brown on the radio, let me turn on a different station. The problem is T-Pain was on every other hook, right? Whether it was his own singles, whether it was on his more club or pop sounding singles like Low or Blame It, whether it was on his more street sounding singles like I'm So Hood, his love songs like Shoddy. He was diverse enough in his sounds where you could get away with playing T-Pain songs back to back, but radio stations didn't like that because, again, they had a system in place where they tried to separate the same artist being played twice in a row. So his label told him, stop getting on these features because you're oversaturating yourself on the radio. People are hearing you too much. Horrible decision because they didn't realize that we were emerging into the internet era at that point in time where the audience made the selection for the music they wanted to hear. And if T-Pain was the one dictating the charts, that meant the audience wanted to hear them. So as a result, if the radio was smart, you just keep playing the hits. It doesn't matter who's on it, right? You would see that occur with Drake very shortly after this, right? He was on every single song, every hit song after this. Same with Chris Brown, same with Future. He was on everything. But T-Pain's label took a more traditional approach. So T-Pain kind of stepped back as Drake started emerging. He basically handed Drake over that opportunity to replace him with that same formula, that same blueprint of just dominating every hook.
At that point, we was already planning on like stopping. I was gonna disappear for a while. So I really started getting oversaturated.
Right.
And it turned into this whole T-Pain is on too much shit. Radio stations complaining, they pulling my records off because in radio stations they got the separator joint to where they make sure they don't play too much of an artist right after each other.
Right.
But if my name is on every song, then the machine is shutting down.
But it wasn't just that. We get to red flag number 3, the biggest one of all. Jay-Z was making his big comeback in 2009 with the Blueprint 3, and his debut single on that album was DOA, Death of Autotune. Now, this wasn't exactly a diss to T-Pain. This was a diss to the industry. Jay-Z started hearing autotune on Wendy's commercials. He was hearing every single rapper use autotune. Do you guys remember Pop Champagne by Ron Browns? You remember Roscoe Dash? A-Rap Money by Busta Rhymes? Xan with That Lean by Soulja Boy? Every rapper was using autotune. Some were using it well, like Kanye and Lil Wayne, which Jay-Z shouted out on Death of Autotune saying they're using it the right way. He also shouted out T-Pain saying, get back to rapping, you're T-Paining too much. Basically using T-Pain's name as a synonym for autotune, which is actually a compliment. If anything, it means he was a pioneer in this massive trend. But Jay-Z was just tired of other rappers using the trend to try and get a hit of their own. The problem is T-Pain took this as a diss, and that left a bad taste in people's mouths because it was like, how uncomfortable are you with your position in the game where one rapper who's actually complimenting you, a legend nonetheless, you're taking that as a threat. And especially this is at a time when, again, T-Pain is on a hiatus. He's not dropping any music. So the world is looking like, you're not putting out any more hits. It's like, what have you done for me lately? And instead, you're just complaining that Jay-Z, who just dropped this monster single, is tired of everyone using a blueprint that you cemented. So when Jay-Z was performing at Summer Jam that year, T-Pain actually hopped on stage while he was doing Death of Autotune without Jay-Z knowing, kind of as a way to say like, hey, I'm here. Don't be dissing the thing that I made my career off of. Let me show the world, like, as much as you want to diss autotune, I'm still going to be right here and you can't brush me off. And ultimately, T-Pain admits that this was all a big misunderstanding, right? He just heard Death of Autotune and he immediately thought this was a diss. He handled it the wrong way, as he admits, and he later ended up apologizing to Jay-Z.
There's at least 8 interviews where I say I'm not talking to T-Pain, so the logic of it just doesn't apply. So maybe he just, went out there and he said something and he ain't really all the way mean it, and I'm cool with that. Let's just move on from it. And take that personal because I didn't know. If I knew T-Pain was coming and I thought he was a fan, that'd be something else. I didn't know he was coming on stage. I just saw an image.
Let me know when you're performing the song. I'm going to go support it. Ebro set it up. Ebro talked to whoever he talked to. Like, ain't nobody just getting on stage with Jay-Z, bro. Right. Like, you ain't just about to walk up and say, I'm going on stage. Once somebody yelled out T-Pain coming through, everybody split apart and was like, here you go. That's the way you go to do what we already talked about you doing. Okay. So, when I went up there to support it. I don't think anybody told Jay. When I first heard the song, I didn't even pay attention to him saying that. I didn't even know he said my name in the song. I was just so shocked, like, why is it, what the Once I sat down to listen to it, I was like, oh, he's talking about rappers.
Now, with Jay-Z dissing this robotic tool that every rapper was using, it kind of became clowned on in the industry. Other heavy hitters like Christina Aguilera had mocked autotune as well. Critics started framing it as a crutch for people who couldn't really sing, and they put T-Pain in that box as the face of the scapegoat for a technique that he popularized. And while 2009 still did come with some hits, I'm on a Boat with Lonely Island and All the Above with Mano, there was no denying that T-Pain's impact in 2009 was not nearly what it was in 2007 or 8, and not even close to the impact that a guy like Drake, who is now in T-Pain's lane, had in 2009. At the top of the year in 2010, things would take a slight turnaround when T-Pain dropped All I Do Is Win with DJ Khaled, obviously his hook being the most iconic part of that song. But in 2010, that wasn't the celebratory anthem that it would age to be. It was just merely, another hit on the charts. It wasn't truly enough to carry T-Pain's impact into the new decade, and the music industry was shifting. The record label that he was signed to, Jive, suddenly consolidated, which meant that there was a bunch of firings at the label, and they shrunk like 4 labels into one. So now T-Pain was under a new label called RCA, and with a lack of management, a lack of care into crafting the next T-Pain project, he wasn't left with the resources he needed to have the same impact that he had in the late 2000s, especially with the very turbulent 2009 that he had, the whole death of autotune thing, the whole Drake thing, and the label started mismanaging him, to say the least. He put out 2 promotional singles for his upcoming project. They both flopped. They were both horrible decisions for first singles for this new comeback album. Take Your Shirt Off, it hit number 80 on the Billboard charts, and then Reverse Cowgirl, that failed to actually even hit the Billboard charts. Reverse Cowgirl was a song that T-Pain actually wanted to give to his artist that he just signed, One Chance. It was a slower, more sensual song, and he felt like it would be great for a new artist. But with the brand that T-Pain had already built, being known to be this club hitmaker, a slower, more R&B, baby-making song, that wasn't the massive anthem-sounding music that T-Pain needed to really rejuvenate his career. So he struggled to gain the buzz to drop his upcoming album. The singles weren't building enough momentum for him to get the green light to go ahead and release the project. Now, this is where things get interesting. T-Pain was actually considering signing to Young Money around 2010.
That you were actually signing to YMCMB. Did that happen?
There was truth to that. And then...
Changed your mind last minute?
I didn't change my mind. Young Money changed their mind.
Huh?
Signing to Young Money would have meant that T-Pain had right-hand access to both Lil Wayne and Drake. Apparently, Birdman didn't end up signing him because, according to T-Pain, he was too much of a loose cannon. He was drinking a lot. Labels were kind of scared that he would be more of a liability than a profit maker. But regardless of that, of course, with Drake taking heavy inspiration from T-Pain's sound, it was only logical that now that Drake's buzz was at an all-time high while T-Pain's was slowly dwindling down, Drake would lend out a hand and lend out a feature to help T-Pain rejuvenate the career. Now, T-Pain had a hit that he was sitting on, 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if you guys remember that song. It was a little forgettable, but it was a big hit at the time. He actually wanted Drake on the song, and he was pushing back his album to get that Drake verse for the record. He claims that he ended up driving all the way to Toronto to record with Drake, specifically to get a feature for that song, and it just never ended up happening.
He went on the Breakfast Club and he was like, if T-Pain was light-skinned, Drake wouldn't exist.
Have you ever did a record with Drake?
I did 4 records with Drake. I wanted Drake to get on 5 o'clock in the morning, my record. I drove from Atlanta to Toronto to go get the record, and he never did it. And then after that, I went on Twitter, as per advice of my managers. It was just like, everybody go tag Drake and tell him to finish that record. I gave him. Then he hit my manager, was like, tell T-Pain, I know he don't really want to work with me. He gaslit me.
Now, they ended up putting Wiz Khalifa on the song instead. It was a pretty respectable hit, reaching number 10 on the Billboard charts, but it wasn't enough to get his upcoming album, Revolver, to really sell what it needed to. The album finally came out in December of 2011, over 3 years after his last album. It hit only 28 on the Billboard charts and sold around 35,000 copies in the first week. massive underperformance, considering his last album sold 170,000, and if you're looking at his contemporaries by this point in time, Chris Brown is still doing 250,000 in the first week, and Drake is already out here doing 500K first week. So for T-Pain to do 35,000, that was very, very low. And T-Pain ultimately blames this on the mismanagement from the label, them telling him to go with that underwhelming single Reverse Cowgirl when he wanted to give it to his artists, them consolidating the whole label and not having the proper resources to actually promote this album the way it needed to be.
All the labels like just did a merger. Like all of them just came together. So I was signed to Jive, and then out of nowhere, nobody said anything. Like a week into the Revolver album, I was signed to RCA, and nobody told me. And the reason that Revolver did so bad is because nobody in the label cared about that album. It was basically RCA. They got 4 labels worth of artists and 1 label worth of staff. I invited everybody to my house and tried to like have a listening party. I got drunk, went off on everybody because they were listening to my album, but nobody was listening. Everybody was just talking.
Now, as you can see, unless we got copyrighted on that clip, T-Pain was kind of a little bit of a drinker, to say the least, right? And when he would drink, he would say whatever's on his mind, which is good and all, but you have to remember, you're in the music industry, right? This is a fake place. And it seems like T-Pain realized that now when he's talking about DJ Khaled and no one really being your brothers. But at the time, he's probably looking at the landscape like, I just gave so many of you guys hits that you can now feed your families off of, right? You can go tour off of those hooks that I gave you. So now that my career is not in the place that it maybe was in 2008, 2007, you guys still have all this buzz. It would be great to have the favor returned back, right? Maybe you hop on one of my songs and give me a little bit of that push that I might need at this point in my career. But this is when T-Pain started realizing that all those people who he helped out, that wasn't because they were brothers. That was because T-Pain had the stimulus package.
I was the music Jesus, man. You want to get saved, come to the church of T-Pain. I'll slam you a hook on there and I'll make sure you're good for at least 3 more years and you'll be fine. I did a lot of that for a lot of people. And, you know, when it was basically my turn to, return a favor, because, a lot of people don't know, most of those features I did back in 2008 and 9 and 10, I did all of them for free. So I did a lot of stuff for free and then, nothing was reciprocated. Even if I got somebody to even try to be on the song, they come back and charge. And I'm like, well, remember the thing I did? Let's go ahead and not charge me there, bro. And they just wouldn't do it.
So that was a dark first warning for T-Pain that there was no friends in the industry. And now it's around 2012. T-Pain had made all that money from his features, his songs, his tours, but he's stuck in a crappy label contract. He doesn't have the type of buzz at this point where he can just go and drop a song and it'll blow up, it'll make him a bunch of more money. And sadly, he blew a lot of the money that he ended up making throughout the height of his career. He made about $40 million from all those massive hits in the late 2000s, but with that came a lot of reckless spending. He bought a $1.7 million Bugatti and quickly returned it because it needed some sort of maintenance work, and he realized just the maintenance work alone is like a down payment on a house. The problem is when you take a car off the lot, it depreciates in value immensely. So for T-Pain, that $1.7 million he spent on a Bugatti that he now wants to sell, it's only worth around $800,000. And he's looking at his manager and his accountant and everyone who's handling his money, and they're telling him, hey buddy, what money? You spent it all.
My accountant was like, dude, you just bought a Bugatti. You're out of money. And I was like, no, I'm not. I got this house I want to get. I got this other house for my assistants. And so we bought a house after that, and we just started going crazy with the money. I wasn't paying attention to it. As I thought if I didn't have access to my own accounts, that I wouldn't have to look at it. Bad business choices.
What's the most you ever had in the bank at one time?
$40 million.
$40 million to zero?
Yeah.
And it was just all bad spending? No bad investments? What was it?
It was a lot of bad investments.
Now, things just started getting worse and worse for T-Pain around this time. He had spent all his money. He didn't have the buzz to be able to regenerate more money off of his music. The people that he thought were his friends in the game no longer were there to give him features now that he wasn't good for a quick hit. And it was actually Usher who said something to T-Pain that completely destroyed his confidence and left him in a 4-year depression. Usher and T-Pain were on their way to the 2013 BET Awards, and Usher had told T-Pain that because of the auto-tune that he introduced into the game, he basically destroyed music, in Usher's opinion.
We was actually going to the 2013 BET Awards, and we were all in first class, and I went to sleep. I was awakened by the flight attendant. She said, Usher would like to talk to you in the back. So I got up and went back, and he was like, how's everything going? Quick small talk, no big deal. And he was like, man, I want to tell you something, man. I was like, what's good? I thought he was about to tell me something real. He sounded real concerned. He was like, man, you kind of f***ed up music. I didn't understand. Usher was my friend. He was like, nah, man, you really f***ed up music for real singers. Literally at that point, I couldn't listen. Is he right? Did I f*** this up? Did I fuck up music? And that is the very moment, and I don't even think I realized this for a long time. That's the very moment that started like a 4-year depression for me. It felt like everybody just hated me. That nigga said you f***ed up music for real singers.
And he was dead serious.
Dead serious. And I thought he was joking, and I laughed, and he was like, nah, for real. I was like, oh, okay.
I think you said you went into depression, but you didn't go into depression because of that.
That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. That was just it. I was going through so much shit.
Now, at this point, T-Pain's financial troubles are only getting worse. He says it got so bad to the point where he had to borrow money to buy his kids food. And around this same time, somebody else had just taken T-Pain's lane. Remember how in 2009, T-Pain takes a step back, Drake comes in and starts killing every single hook. He becomes the new stimulus package for rappers looking for a quick hit. Well, by 2013, now that role is taken by Future. And a lot of people actually downplay the maybe indirect influence, if you want to call it that Future took from T-Pain. I mean, T-Pain in 2008 was rocking these like circus top hats, and by 2013, Future is everywhere wearing a massive cowboy hat. And aesthetically beyond that, they both had a very similar style of dreadlocks. But beyond just style, it was the fact that Future had now become the go-to hook guy if you wanted a club banger drenched in autotune. To me, that really solidified the fact that T-Pain was no longer needed in the industry. His spot had fully been filled. All of these DJ Khaled records that were coming out in this era, they all had Future on them now. DJ Khaled even had an artist by the name of Ace Hood. Absolute legend. I love Ace Hood. But he had Future on his biggest hit, I Woke Up in a New Bugatti. And funny enough, whose Bugatti did they use to shoot the music video for that song? None other than T-Pain's. Now, this is an interesting story, which maybe is where T-Pain is getting the whole idea that DJ Khaled wasn't actually his real friend. Because obviously at this point in time, T-Pain is kind of struggling to get a rebrand going, right? But you got this guy in Future who would mesh perfectly on a song with T-Pain. So at first, T-Pain doesn't actually view Future as competition. He wanted to collaborate with him, seeing Future as part of the next generation that was just carrying the torch. But when he reached out through people in Future's circle, specifically Future's brother, who he saw in a club, Future's brother told him that he would never collaborate with T-Pain. And that's when T-Pain started going off.
Told me that Future don't f with me, and Future he'll never support me, and he'll never support anything I do. So after that, I went on my tangent like, well, f all y'all niggas then.
So essentially, T-Pain hops on social media and posts that Ace Hood, Future, and DJ Khaled are shooting a music video with T-Pain's Bugatti. Here, he's trying to diss Future, but really, he's dissing Ace Hood, who I believe that same year had a fake Rolex at the BET Awards that fell off his wrist because it was so fake. And now it's like, well, you have this song called Bugatti, but you're really using someone else's car in the music video. It was definitely much worse of a look for Ace Hood than it was for Future, even though T-Pain was trying to target Future in that whole thing. And again, Ace Hood is DJ Khaled's artist. So this prompts DJ Khaled to, the whole fake industry thing. He sees them all on the red carpet. He's like, we got to take a picture together for the internet. And this is when it clicks in T-Pain's mind, like, all right, this guy's completely fake. I've cried in front of this guy. Early on, DJ Khaled, if you guys didn't know, he was a DJ at a famous radio station in Florida, 99 Jams, and T-Pain would tell DJ Khaled, these guys in the industry, they're not your real friends. They're just looking for you to spin their records while you DJ on the radio. But me, I'm your real friend. Here's all these free features, here's all this music to boost your own career, and that's great and all, but then T-Pain's buzz starts dying down. DJ Khaled no longer needs him for those hooks, and instead turns to Drake, turns to Future, turns to Chris Brown. And T-Pain believes that essentially told the industry, like, T-Pain is no longer needed for these big moments in hip-hop, right? Beyond that, T-Pain believes because he wasn't willing to compromise, do the fake industry politicking stuff, that DJ Khaled and others kind of viewed him as a loose cannon, a liability. And essentially, there was a memo going around the industry like, hey, maybe don't work with T-Pain because if he understands your operations, he might talk on these interviews and might expose who you truly are, and that'll be a bad look for you. And then on top of that, of course, he's also dissing Ace Hood with that whole Bugatti thing unintentionally. T-Pain is not really setting himself in a good position when it comes to fake politicking within the industry, and because of that, less and less people now want to start working with him.
When we met up at the BET Awards, me, Future, Khaled was like, we're gonna do this for the internet. And I'm like, I don't do anything for the internet.
Do what for the internet, squash?
I'm not about to do the antics. Right. And he like shunned me for that. I've talked to Khaled a lot. I've cried in front of Khaled. These niggas is literally trying to get spins on 99 Jams. And I was like, bro, I'm the only nigga that really with you. And he was like, I like that. It wasn't Khaled's fault. He needed to be a part of the industry still. And I know if he would have kept with me, then nobody would for him. A lot of people stopped with me because in that depressive moment, people was, it was like an industry-wide thing. Like, don't with T-Pain. He may very well tell the truth about what you're actually doing. I wanted everybody to know how fake and fucking stupid everybody was in this industry. It was a memo that went out and said, everybody do not with T-Pain. If you do, don't let him know how your operation actually works.
Now, it was after this point in time, T-Pain had finally got out of his record label deal with RCA, the bad management. He was completely on his own, completely independent, and he said it was actually none other than Drake who gave him advice that he followed that would completely transform his career. Advice that Drake wouldn't take himself and would in fact diss T-Pain over years later. Basically, what Drake said was he doesn't want to be the guy who overstays his welcome. He wants to leave the industry when the industry wants him out, when his sound is no longer relevant, when he doesn't have the capability of making the same hits or reaching the same heights that he could early on in his career, and instead of trying to chase old moments, just bow out gracefully. When T-Pain heard that, that's exactly what he did, and he explored new ventures and just released music on his own terms, at his own pace. And he says the irony in that is that Drake just simply didn't follow his own advice, but T-Pain followed it.
One thing I learned from Drake, but one thing he hasn't followed his own words. Drake said, I want to be one of them people that gracefully bow out and not get kicked out. I have ever since said, thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. I see y'all when I drop. Don't worry about it. I'll just drop something. Let me know if you heard it. I'm not trying to impress y'all. Y'all don't give a fuck about live or die. Yeah. I'm done. I did everything that I was trying to do. I changed the game. I made a sound. What else?
And with that, you get the complete transformation of T-Pain's career. While the industry shunned him, while his old friends who he gave massive hits to no longer wanted to collaborate with him, T-Pain set out on a whole new lane, a whole new mission to completely revitalize his career. It wasn't actually in music, but instead, it was showcasing his personality on the up-and-coming platform, Twitch. This is long before Kai Cenat was, doing these 30-day, 24 hours, no sleep live streams. T-Pain was simply on there, kicking it, playing video games, catching up with his fans, and most importantly, teaching them about the music business and showing them a behind-the-scenes look at him actually creating music.
When I sample a song, they're like, we want 70% of the song. I'm like, all right, cool, take it. You want 100? You can have 100% of the song. I don't give a shit. This song's gonna be so big, I'm gonna be on the road for the next 2 years getting $60,000 a night. You're gonna be waiting on royalty checks, which is probably gonna be about $13 a month. And most of that money, where you're getting your percentage from, is going back to the label anyway.
And as the Twitch platform grew, so did T-Pain's pockets. He's been streaming for almost 8 years at this point. And by 2025, he's actually one of the bigger creators on Twitch with around 1 million subscribers. T-Pain at this point makes music at his own pace, at his own time, and he doesn't even really need to make music because he says he's making around $50,000 per hour when he hops on those Twitch live streams.
Like when you making 50, 60 grand an hour playing video games and your draws, it's kind of hard to get me to go out the country for, what I'm saying?
Hold on. You said 50, 60 grand an hour.
And I'm on the low tier. I'm on the low tier. This dude's making millions a month. I'm making less than T. Chris. Oh. When I get deals like 7-Eleven, they gave me 250 grand to play any game I wanted for 2 hours, but just in certain intervals, just say, hey guys, 7-Eleven has pizza now. Cool, let's get back to the game.
That's an absolutely crazy rebrand, a crazy pivot, right? From having to borrow money to buy your kids food to now making $50,000 an hour streaming. I mean, sign me up, man. I need to get on Twitch, I guess. But T-Pain has always had like this vibrant, great personality, right? So it fits perfectly for the streaming world. And like I explained earlier in this video, he's always known how to produce since the beginning of time. So he's literally on there cooking up beats, cooking up music, as his fans are just watching him live. It's a great setup, and at the same time, remember, T-Pain's sound is pivotal in the sonics and just the overall landscape of hip-hop and the music industry today. So it's no surprise that his old records, those massive hits, are still streaming immensely well in 2025. So much so to the point where T-Pain was actually able to sell his catalog for an astounding number. It hasn't been truly revealed, but it's probably upwards of $100 million. And he just revealed that by selling his catalog, he was actually able to afford buying his family a private jet. And the key difference now is T-Pain is the one in control of his finances. He's looking at all money coming in, all money coming out, and he has multiple very lucrative streams of revenue. Not only is he making crazy amounts of money on Twitch, not only does he have that massive check from selling his catalog, but he's also still selling out shows all across the world. Only difference is he now has a private jet to take him to those shows. Now, I think this is the ultimate comeback story, right? When the industry boots you, your sound may no longer be relevant. Utilize your strong suits like your personality, your knack for songwriting and producing to build out your own lane on your own terms. T-Pain was an early adopter of the Twitch live streaming business model, and with the industry refusing to lend a helping hand when T-Pain needed it the most, he decided to help himself rebuild his empire his own way and completely redefine his legacy. A rapper turned singer turned streamer to a private jet. Pretty epic story. Now, as someone who's been following T-Pain since a kid, this was one of the funnest videos that I've ever had the chance to make, so I'm very happy I got to do this. I'm even happier that T-Pain is in such a great position to this very day. He's also still married to the same woman who was with him before he ever blew up 20 years ago. So it seems like he's just living life, man, and living a great life nonetheless. And it just goes to show you guys, never rely on anyone else to get you to where you want to get to, right? Utilize your strong suits. T-Pain knew he had a great personality. He knew how to make music. He merged those two into this whole streaming lane, and now he's richer than ever. Find your strong suits and run with that, and pursue your dreams. And let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.